Hello everyone, it's me, John Lorden, and I'm back with another Brain Scratch. Now, I've thought about this case for a long time and how to even present it on Brain Scratch because quite honestly, I've seen a lot of TV shows cover it and the coverage on it it's not great. It's not the most detailed, and it's very hard to do detailed coverage on this story because of how big it is. Going off the top of my head, so Shannan Gilbert gets called for a job near the Gilgo Beach area. She goes to the John's house, and she's supposed to be there only for 2 hours, but it seems like that gets stretched out a little bit. At some point, so we're now looking in the middle of the morning, at some point she calls 911. But when the police arrived at 5:40 a.m., Shannan Gilbert had vanished. They assumed she had already left the area with her driver, Michael Pack. So at this point, you're probably wondering, John, how does this all relate to some type of serial killer? We're just talking about what's going on with this one girl, and we don't even know what really happened to her outside of something scared her, and she went running off. Well, they started looking for her body in this area, and they found some bones. I think they pretty quickly determined that those bones are not, in fact, Shannan. Then they find another set and another set. The Long Island serial killer, also referred to by media sources as the Gilgo Beach Killer or the Craigslist Ripper, is an unidentified suspect American serial killer who is believed to have murdered 10 to 17 people associated with the sex trade over a period of nearly 20 years. What's kind of a miracle in all this is that the search for Shannan uncovered all of these other murders that we didn't even know had happened. On December 13th, 2011, the remains of Shannan Gilbert were found in a marsh about a half mile from where she disappeared, and a week after, some of her clothes and belongings were found in the vicinity. Police believe that Shannan accidentally drowned after stumbling into a swamp, a view not shared by her mother. Is her death related to the Long Island serial killer? Is her story part of those other 10 bodies that are found? Happy Friday and welcome to another episode of Brain Scratch. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for joining me here today in an episode that is nearly a decade in the making, and it's one that I'm pretty excited about. You know, certain cases are sometimes too big for me to try to dive into with only a week to do the research. The Long Island serial killer is one of those cases. For my original video from 9 years ago, I had a researcher named Emre who had been looking into it for weeks, if not months. I watched hours of coverage and even read the book Lost Girls. And this entire exercise reminded me how I've always struggled with serial murder cases. I just hate diluting the victims to tick marks in the psyche of the perpetrator, helping to elevate the fear around that perpetrator, and basically giving them exactly what they want. So in the end, I tried to be as helpful as possible by focusing on one case. 9 years ago, I asked a question that I still don't have the answer to. Is Shannan Gilbert connected to the other murders? There's one man that I know that lived in the Gilgo Beach cases for a very long time. He even made a docu-series that both impressed and inspired me. Today, we're welcoming him to the channel to help us catch up on the latest developments in the Long Island serial killer case and maybe help answer that lingering question that I still have. Let's welcome Joshua Zeman to the show. This feels like a meeting that is way overdue.
Absolutely.
Let's go ahead and let's dive into some of the details, because basically I did an episode 9 years ago focused really on Shannan Gilbert. Because I was intimidated by trying to take on, like, I didn't want it to turn into the victims are just tick marks for this legend of this boogeyman that we're creating. And thankfully, that's why Lost Girls is so amazing. Like how it humanizes each of the victims is amazing. You find out about the real people. And I can't do that in a week's worth of research, obviously. But May of 2010, Shannan Gilbert calls 911. Very interesting phone call, and then she disappears. It starts a mystery of her own, but that leads to the discovery of several others. That call is now available, and for years everyone was pulling their hair out saying, we need to hear the phone call. It's now been released. I know the sergeant that was releasing it gave this whole kind of speech before saying, okay, now you have to listen to this thing all together, because if you take any one part of it, it's going to sound really fantastic, or, you could really misunderstand things. When you listen to that phone call, what do you hear?
It's hard because I am biased by this point. I've gone down so many different story paths. By the time I heard it, I think I couldn't separate myself from my belief system. I remember even speaking to Tim Sini, who was the DA at the time. I was like, why won't you release the phone call? And he's like, we can, it's legal. I was like, but don't you understand you're creating your own nightmare out there in the public? You're allowing people to say these things and go down these different rabbit holes. And I think he heard me, but I also think he was reticent because of that old school thing that we don't share any information with the public. It's tough. I will say that I have gone back and forth emotionally on what happened to Shannan 9 million times every day.
I'm sure.
And that only proves what a conundrum it is.
Yeah.
I'll say it again. It doesn't technically make any sense that it would be part of some, Eyes Wide Shut style scenario of powerful men, killing this girl because of the details, because of the driver bringing her to the location, because of Joe Brewer's immediately going to the police and filing a missing persons report. None of that. It doesn't have any of the same setup as the Long Island serial killer.
Right.
But at the same time, as everybody says, there's no coincidence in true crime. Detectives say that all the time. Then how do you reconcile the fact that Shannan Gilbert theoretically accidentally died, but somehow led to the discovery of so many other sex workers just 9 miles away?
Yeah. Right. I mean, I know there's a bunch of paranormal people saying it's, there's a vortex to hell or something like nearby, or some type of reasoning like that. No.
Well, they go there because there's no legitimate explanation for how this could happen. And I'll speak to people, and one day they'll say like, no, it was an accident. And another day, they'll say something happened. I think the problem in this case is and it happens a lot in true crime, that there are participants, lawyers, and people like that who want to push the narrative. And so they kind of drum up some of the sensationalized story bits, and then the public and even investigators can't really separate that out.
Yeah. It's the full thing is available. I'll have a link to it down below. And if you're interested in this case enough to be in this interview with us, you should probably listen to it for yourself, so you get your own opinion on it. To share my opinion with you, it's 20 minutes. The first thing that occurs to me is this woman sounds drugged. The speech that she's saying over and over, she sounds like someone that is struggling with consciousness almost. And she's literally just repeating the most basic thing that she can, which is, I need help. I need help. Why are you guys doing this to me? You were part of this. It's all these very accusatory, but there's this other pattern that I can't shake in my head, in that she's saying, I need help. Her voice, she's not screaming, I need help. They're trying to kill me. She's like, I need help. I need help. It's the tone of her voice is in the wrong place.
Agreed on that one.
And she doesn't go anywhere seemingly for like 15 minutes. It's almost like her fight or flight has been suppressed. And then all of a sudden it kicks in, and you can literally hear, she just breaks into a mad dash and she goes tearing off out the door. So that's the main thing that occurs to me, is just, why was she drugged in that way? It doesn't sound necessarily like some kind of manic episode or something along those lines to me, until we get to like that fight or flight that kicks in, the mad dash, and then off to whatever happened. But the other thing that sticks out to me is, why are you calling me by my name? She literally says that at one point, and it made me remember. I'm like, oh wait, yeah, I mean, she's a call girl, right? Like, would she be using her own name for this type of work, and she's at a client's place. Like, how would he know her name? And then she does make accusations to Michael, her driver, about him being involved in some way. But that's basically, that's all I can get from it.
Well, it does sound very disassociative,
Yeah.
number one. And that is a bit weird. Definitely feels drugged or something to that effect. The other thing is Pac has no reason to be part of anything.
Yeah.
He's just so far removed. And I was very into this idea of the driver, by the way, this kind of quarter pimp, if you will.
Right.
That was a very new thing. And that is why even in the killing season, we drove a sex worker named Super around, because that experience of being the driver, you're responsible, but you're not responsible. You're there for protection, but you can't really protect. You're doing something illegal, but not fully illegal. There were all these really interesting ramifications of the driver, but it just didn't make sense. When we spoke to Richard Dormer, who was the original police chief, he's like, the driver, it doesn't make sense. The driver isn't in on it. He's very removed from the situation. So that was number one. And the driver, people even say to me, like, why would the driver leave? Why would the driver leave? And I think you just have to understand the situation.
Yeah.
Usually when you have a driver and a sex worker, and usually when you have a sex worker, it is not the most stable relationship. It is a relationship based upon money and often drugs.
Yeah.
And that is not a stable relationship. I think Pac left because he was like, this is stupid. This is ridiculous. I'm out of here. He also knew the cops were coming, and he doesn't want to get busted himself.
Right.
I think there's also something that's worth listening in. And literally, I just heard it the other day. Joe Brewer's conversation where he called Suffolk County Police Department.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard that too. Yeah.
And that is also really important to know how he was speaking about Shannan, what he was saying or what he wasn't saying, trying to protect himself from saying, yes, I was engaging with a sex worker, yet at the same time, concerned, concern about what was going on. So you listen to that dance, if you will. And then Shannon's fight or flight reflex kicking in. But I don't understand, for example, why if Gus Coletti, the older individual whose door that she knocked on, he said, come on in, and she refused to come on in, like that would have been safe haven.
Right.
So I think we're talking about blind panic and why does it go there? And then the other thing people just have to realize, there's so many people who are speculating, you have to go to that swamp. You have to walk through that swamp. It was a surreal experience walking through there and realizing that anybody who goes in there is going to be trapped.
Yeah.
In a waterlogged cornfield way, in a scary, scary way.
Yeah, they included that in the link I have down below. If you guys watch the whole thing, you'll see that too. The sergeant at the beginning kind of presents his version of what happened, and they run footage of walking through there and talking about those reeds can get as much as 12 feet tall. Yeah, it looks like you're literally in a corn maze, but there's no path cut out. Like you're just stuck in the middle of it.
And there's 3 feet of water.
Yeah.
It's when my producing partner at the time, Rachel, was walking through, and I was kind of like just watching her, almost like, what would a young girl in this situation do? And she was just kind of falling all over the place because it's rough. And her foot kept going through into the water, and she was stopping and kind of being like, ow, 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 ow. Right. I couldn't even imagine Shannan Gilbert, barely clothed, running through that marsh.
Right. Now, around all this, we had someone that seemed to insert themselves right into the case very early on. Dr. Peter Hackett, he contacted Shannan's mother 2 or 3 days later, if I recall correctly, saying that he actually tried to help her, but then he denied it. And then later it would be proven that he actually did. What's your take on him, and why did this happen in this way? Like, he threw so much smoke around this.
Strange guy. I think he is one of those people who just loves to insert themselves in drama. There's a lot of people that we know out there who do that. And I think he went too far. I don't understand why he would have even said, I run a home for wayward girls. Why he would have said that to the mother. he says he was trying to make her feel better, but my God, to say something like that is just above and beyond.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's his wife is around so much that I just don't see there being anything going on. People are like, "Oh, he's chasing her through the marsh." Like this guy with a bad leg and a bad hip is not chasing anybody through that marsh. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah.
Um, why did he say this to Mary Gilbert? I don't know. He has a history of inserting himself. He has a history of trying to be the hero. He has a history of prescribing things to people. I don't think, however, that goes farther than that, to be honest with you. I don't think so.
Yeah.
We had interviewed a number of different people in the community, and they were willing to take these neighborly gripes that you have, like Nightmare on Maple Street, the Twilight Zone episode where everybody just starts accusing each other.
Yeah.
They were willing to take these gripes and to elevate them in the most bizarre way. And that's what I couldn't figure out, like why one guy would be accusing another guy of being a serial killer if they were just trying to get on the board, you know, but they were willing to go there. They were
Yeah.
willing to go there.
It's like an amplified version of the kind of stuff you'd see in small town crime, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but it's been hyper amplified because of it's even smaller. The cast of characters, like we're dealing with almost like a board game of Clue. Like we've only got a certain amount of rooms and people that you can move around him. And he's the guy that was writing prescriptions, and we both had that conversation. It sounded like she was drugged. Not to say that he necessarily wrote the prescription that was responsible for that, but
Well, I'll be honest, there's a lot of people who say, and this is of course all alleged, but if it came out that what his role was is that he did give Shannan some medication, I wouldn't be surprised.
okay.
That would make sense to me. She's running from house to house to house. She runs to his house. He tries to help her. He ends up giving her medication. She then runs out, and then he realizes, oh my God, that was the wrong thing to do right at that moment. But then
Yeah.
he can't reverse that decision. She runs into the marsh and then expires in the marsh from a deadly cocktail of a lot of drugs, and some. And I'm not blaming the victim here. The bipolar disorder, and what I mean by that, meaning because of her chemical imbalance,
Yeah.
those drugs interact in a very specific way.
That could also leave him with a sense of responsibility and
Oh,
forced to pick up
absolutely.
the phone a couple days later. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, there's a question about that. There was always about what day he called Mary, and I don't think we ever got the truth about what day he called. I think there might be some misremembering on both sides,
Okay.
but but to deny calling her is just the worst move ever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and of course she was smart enough to do a full press on that and fire up a lawsuit and yeah, try to find out the truth there. Um, so are any updates on him? Do you know where he's at recently? I heard some comment that he says like he's basically unemployable at this point or something along those lines, but no
And
updates.
and kind of should be if considering his actions. He's in Florida. We went to Florida. We tried to go into the community where he lived to see if we can get another interview with him. And we kept trying the whole time, but he doesn't want to talk. And I don't. It's not the behavior of a serial killer on the run.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of the behavior of a doctor who might have done a really, really stupid thing that could lead to some kind of manslaughter charge that maybe we don't know about.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
I mean, that's my opinion. And you know what?
Yeah.
I, I could be completely wrong. I don't think he's, in my opinion, a serial killer. A doctor who overprescribes, absolutely. A doctor who inserts himself, absolutely. A doctor who may be responsible for giving Shannan some kind of drugs, again, I wouldn't be surprised.
Sure. So in 2022, Suffolk County Police form a new task force, and apparently 6 weeks later, we've got this new name all of a sudden in consideration. Please enlighten us all. Who is Rex Heuermann?
It's a great question. Rex Heuermann is an architect from Massapequa. He has a wife and two children. Rex Heuermann is a really interesting individual. He's huge. by the way, 6'5", 280.
Oh, wow.
Um, and Rex Heuermann allegedly is in fact the Long Island serial killer. There is a lot of evidence to suggest that he is. And when you go and look at Rex's history, there is a lot of correlations that make sense, a lot of sense.
Like what in his history stands out to you?
So one of the things we know about the Long Island serial killer was how meticulous he was.
Mm-hmm.
He was a planner. Rex is an architect. An architect is very much a planner. So we have, when police went to Rex's house, they looked at some computers that had some information erased, and they found a planning document. It is probably one of the most terrifying documents that I've ever seen. And I know a lot of people have seen. I was on a live stream with a guy named Joe Jackalone, True Crime with Sarge, when this information came up, and it was mind blowing. He had a full list of all the things that he had needed to do: pre-prep, prep, post-prep, wash out cavities, make sure you get enough sleep for more playtime, switch out the tires on the truck, find out the amount of cameras on the Long Island Expressway. It was incredible. So Rex is a planner. He's also, by the way, a function. Because of his age, he's so interesting. He falls within this golden age of serial killers from the 1970s to the 1990s, and the serial killers of today, allegedly, because he has that kind of old school feeling in a way, a Bundy or a Kemper, yet he works a lot of technology, the using Backpage and burner phones. So he's really this meshing. And I like to say that every generation deserves the killer that it gets.
Mm.
Manson was the 1960s. Berkowitz was the 1970s. Not quite sure who the 1980s is, but I think Rex is really the perfect embodiment of who we are at this time. He has this kind of like old school association with these terrifying serial killers, sadists, yet he's very technology orientated. So allegedly. So I really find him to be fascinating in that respect. But it needs all to be proven, and there's a lot of evidence to suggest that he is.
Yeah. Well, and we know from the original coverage that I did, I rewatched it earlier today, and law enforcement was originally saying middle-aged white man, gainfully employed. They had it. He's a match.
Yeah. I tend to think that sometimes profiling is a little like, fortune telling.
Right.
At its best, listen, at its best,
Yeah.
It is an educated guess. At its worst, it's fortune telling.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all like, he could be married, he could, or have a significant other.
Right.
But yeah, I think they definitely got a couple of things right. And some of those things are very logical.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, there's some things that were quite interesting and new.
Can you break down the chain of how he was found? Because I think that's going to touch on some of those new developments that he's brought into this.
Well, this is the problem. This is what we're looking at currently now. How was he found? There's a whole bunch of different stories as to how he was found.
Oh, interesting.
There is the official narrative, which is the police had a little bit of information about him, but what they really needed to do was, they knew he was from Massapequa, but they had to create this box, and this was after Burke and Spoda, Burke being the police chief and DA Spoda, once they left, and this guy, Tim Sini, came in, who then brought the FBI back into the case. This is after more than a decade of false starts and no leads. They bring Tim Sini in, and Sini really starts to work with the FBI to create this box. And it's based upon all the cell phone pings, not just of Rex Heuermann and his burner phone, but all the pings of the victims. He used their phones, he called them, he texted them, all these interactions to set up these meetings. And so from that, they create this box, and this box centers around Massapequa, but there's 1,000 homes. And then from that, they start to go deeper and do more evidence and do more evidence. And finally, they get down to a box that has just a couple hundred homes.
Are we talking like a geofence? Are they using like Google location data or?
Yeah, they're using mostly cell phone pings to
Okay.
create this box. Cell
Okay.
phone pings to do this, and they kind of keep going down and tightening from the cell phone pings where this offender is.
Okay.
And finally, what happens is that now remember, they have this box, right? But they still can't find the perpetrator inside this box. They still can't find Rex. So there's this new DA, Tierney,
Mm-hmm.
really smart guy, career DA, worked for, I think Southern District or Eastern District. And he decides to bring in this kind of new team. And along in that new team is a cop from New York City, head of detectives named Rodney Harrison. Rodney Harrison goes in and he starts going through all the files. They start going through all the files, and just literally 6 weeks later, they find an old clue that had been in one of the police reports about from a guy named Dave Schaller, who happened to be the roommate of a woman named Amberlynn Costello, who was the last victim to be of Rex Heuermann, theoretically alleged, and the last victim of all of the victims that are found along Ocean Parkway. They go in, and this guy Dave Schaller has said to the police, there's a guy who was at the house 2 weeks ago, right before Amber disappeared, and this guy we got in a fight with this guy outside, and he called her again later. But there was something about this guy. You should look at this guy. He's an ogre. He's huge, and he drives this Chevy Avalanche, and that pings to the actual state trooper, a woman who was actually looking at it. She puts his information, Chevy Avalanche, Massapequa dates, and a bunch of names pop up, including this guy, Rex Heuermann.
Mm-hmm.
They look at his picture, and he's huge. And they're like, ding, ding. In the middle of Massapequa, they start to find out more information. They find out he has an office in Midtown. Ding, ding. Because we knew from back in the original bit of the case that the calls that had been made to a number of the family members, kind of taunting them, had come from Midtown Manhattan. So we had Midtown Manhattan as a clue.
Yeah.
We had Massapequa as a clue. We had a Chevy Avalanche as a clue. And then literally they start to go and they hone in on this guy, Rex Heuermann, this ogre of a man, and they start to look at all the details. And then suddenly it all starts to fit. Boom, Rex Heuermann. That's the official narrative.
Okay.
The unofficial narrative
Mm-hmm.
is that they know and knew Massapequa from the very beginning. And that's not really disputed, but the question is like how much they knew. All the girls' cell phones had pinged to Massapequa. They knew Massapequa.
Okay.
And the other is that this wasn't just a clue that had been buried in an old police file. Dave Schaller had told detectives, Suffolk County police detectives, numerous times about this guy, Rex Heuermann.
Yeah. As tipsters with good information usually do.
That's right.
Yeah.
And how do I know this? Because he told us during the killing season about this same guy, this huge guy who had been to the house.
Wow.
We missed it, as did the police miss it. And I'll tell you why. Because we fell under that same age-old mistake of believing that this serial killer was somehow wicked smart, that he was better than the rest, that he wouldn't make a kind of mistake. We said, Dave, there's no way that this guy is going to come back to take Amber after a day or a week. Now, Dave had told us a bit of wrong information that kind of made us disregard this clue. Which we could talk about a little bit later, but we believe that there was no way that Rex Heuermann would do this. He wouldn't return, but yet he did, which is one of Rex's downfalls. So
that's interesting. Was that the only victim he did that with?
We believe so.
We believe so. Yeah, that is really weird. Why would he change his MO?
So Well, his MO's changed numerous times over the years because he's been doing this for close to 32 years.
Oh,
Your MO is going to change because your tastes change because you're trying not to get caught and you're doing one thing, and your MO is also connected to your impulses and your signature. So there's a
right.
lot of different reasons why these MOs would change over the years.
Hmm.
So, but yes, the question is, how much did Suffolk County know before this, and why did that information get missed?
Got it. And then they firm it up by they follow him around, right? And basically pick up a DNA sample off a pizza box. It sounds like
Hmm.
official story.
Yep,
Um, and that matches hair that was found on Megan Waterman's body.
that's correct.
Okay. Okay. Does Rex have any connection to that gated community at Oak Beach?
Not really. No, he doesn't, which is so interesting. Which again brings us back to Shannan being a coincidence or something more. There's a lot of speculation that's been made about it, but we couldn't find any connection to Oak Beach at all.
Okay. I've just bumped into some information. I think it only was released a few days ago about Jones Beach. Are you aware of any of that yet?
Absolutely.
Okay. Can you share with us the possible
Yeah.
linkage there?
So this is really quite interesting. Rex Heuermann, after high school, worked at Jones Beach. He apparently rode around on an ATV or a buggy at night, going on to make sure that nobody was sleeping on the beach. He spent a lot of time at Jones Beach. He then just a few days ago, or I'm not quite sure how long this really happened
Yeah.
because this information just came out in the New York Post, which you would question, why did this information just come out?
Right. Right. Well, we're in pre-trial right now, and yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I find that if the Post had a important piece of information or just something creepy,
Hmm.
they would have printed it much earlier. This piece of information was just kind of released to them.
Yeah.
So you have to ask why that's happening. Yet at the same time, we now know that right after investigators, detectives started looking, they got a call because somebody, Jones Beach itself, was redoing one of I think the bathhouses or one of the facilities there, and they found a cache of women's clothing that had been buried about 2 feet into the sand.
Okay.
And it's a lot of like pants and blouses with buttons ripped off. There's a bloody glove. And it is really quite suspicious because Rex Heuermann worked there so long ago because of the condition of the clothing. It's just very, very interesting. And there is something there, I will tell you.
Okay. And it is close to Oak Beach as well, right? It's like the next beach up.
No, it's in fact in Nassau County,
Oh, okay.
not
Okay.
even in uh, Suffolk County. Remember, so there's this Ocean Parkway is a very long stretch of road.
Okay.
Goes miles and miles and miles. Miles travels the length of what's known as Jones Beach Barrier Island. At the end of the Barrier Island is Oak Beach and Cedar Beach and all these other beaches. That's where Shannan was found. And then you have Gilgo Beach, which is miles away from where Shannan was found, 9 miles away. And then you have Jones Beach, which is even further down.
Okay.
But, and that's again where Rex worked as a kid.
Hmm.
And it's just very interesting um, about this information. And we've been talking internally with a couple of our web sleuth friends, and why is this piece of information being released? And we think that there's a reason. We think it has to do with other victims
Mm.
that may come to the surface and or looking for evidence of other victims. It's important to know that although we've kind of circumstantially linked Rex to a number of other victims, he only has been charged, with the seven, and
Yeah.
that's because there's no DNA. That's because Nassau County DA Tierney is a very smart man. He does not want to charge him for any murder unless there is a rock solid information, which of course would include DNA.
Yeah. And from what I understand, I think for 6 of those cases, they have some form of DNA either tying back to Rex or like Rex's family members.
and this is another strange anomaly of this case. You have a guy who was a planner, researched, did all this stuff. He wrote down his planning documents, washed cavities, used bleach, used Drano. Yet at the end of the murder, tragically, he would wrap them up in tape and somehow manage to get hairs
Hair.
of every one of his family members, you know, wrapped in the body. And so these are the anomalies that don't make sense.
Yeah. There's another one that I'm not sure feels a little bit like an outlier. It was just earlier this year that two more victims were identified. The woman known as Peaches, due to the tattoo found on her remains, and her 2-year-old daughter. That would be 26-year-old Tanya Jackson and her child, Tanya Dykes. Law enforcement's offering $25,000 for info on those cases, and they're saying they're not sure if they're actually connected to the rest. Is there anything that you recall about those cases where you think it's reasonable to say, no, they are actually part of this group? Or do you feel like it's a strong possibility they're not?
I think they're absolutely connected
Okay. Why?
because formerly Baby Doe, now we know as Tatiana Marie Dykes, was found literally 400 feet from Valerie Mack. So one of the other victims.
Yeah.
So 400 feet. We're talking about victims that are spread along Ocean Parkway, along a burial ground, for lack of a better word, dumping ground, trophy garden, whatever you want to call it, that's miles long. Yet
Mm-hmm.
somehow this child is only 400 feet from another victim on one side. The mother is on the other end of this burial ground, like bookends.
Wow. Wow.
There's no, it would have to be another one of the most crazy coincidences in the world for these two. First of all, for that not to be intentional, but
Mm-hmm.
would that be another serial killer dumping a body in right next to Rex's, theoretically one of Rex's alleged victims, which by the way, nobody even knew about, so it would have to be only a victim that he knew about. So that's one. It's the location of where the remains are found, which provides some credence to this.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of other circumstantial reasons. She's found in, forgive me, 96, I think. You have Fire Island Jane Doe, Karen Vergata, found 96. Vergata's found 96. You have, I call her Peaches. That's how we knew her for so long,
Yeah.
as Peaches. And it's so strange that she has her name, and thank God that she does.
Yeah.
It's found in 97. So it makes sense in terms of this killing spree. Also, the fact that Karen Vergata's remains had been dismembered, and Tatiana Marie Dykes and Tisha, the mom's,
Tanya. Yeah.
sorry, Tanya, had been dismembered as well. And then the other interesting thing is Hempstead Park. If you go and you look at a map of where Rex lives,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really, you can almost draw this large circle around it. And so you have to also look at the geoprofiling of the whole thing.
Gotcha. Also, just to put it out there, it's being reported that Tatiana's father is being completely cooperative with law enforcement because, if there is going to be any other potential person of interest in a case like that with a child, they're always going to look in that direction. So a big question I'm wondering, has any connection been found between Rex and the burlap? Because the burlap was such a prominent feature that was put out, that one of the few details they would actually give us.
Well, give us is interesting. Apparently, somebody leaked the story
Yeah.
to the press. We spoke to Richard Dormer about it. He was very interesting. He's like, I'm not going to tell you anything about the burlap. I'm not going to confirm it. He's an old kind of Irish grandfatherly type. But he did tell us there was something printed on the outside of the burlap, and we went nuts looking for what it was. We thought it was having to do with landscaping or clam digging or fishing, but it actually has to do, what was printed on the outside of the burlap was camouflage. And it's so interesting because then when you look at Ocean Parkway, you realize that one of the main activities that people love to do along Ocean Parkway was duck hunt. And
Okay.
this is the type of burlap that duck hunters would use. And then when we go in and look at Rex loved duck hunting. There's pictures of him duck hunting. He had a duck hunting boat that he shared with somebody. He had duck hunting licenses. He had duck hunting guns. So this hunting theme, especially that of duck hunting, really kind of comes into play. It helps answer one of the questions of why are these bodies found along Ocean Parkway? Why are they wrapped in burlap? And this is something that duck hunters use. Duck hunters use to disguise themselves from the birds overhead. It is allegedly believed that Rex used the same camouflage to disguise these bodies so nobody would find them.
Wow. Wow. Now, what about the belt? What about the belt? What about these initials, HMMH? I always wondered if it could also be WH if it was upside down or.
Yeah, that was one of the things that really was confusing in the beginning. The belt. We now know those are the initials of Rex Heuermann's grandfather.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
William Heuermann. The very interesting thing is that when you think about why an individual would wrap one of these bodies in belts, we know that Rex, because his planning document was so meticulous that he had planned every move. Again, he's an architect, he's a builder.
Yeah.
The idea that he would somehow make a mistake and somehow grab a belt that had his grandfather's initials on it doesn't make any sense. This was intentional. And so the question becomes why? What was Rex trying to say? What was Rex trying to do in using this belt? And I think we're still asking that question, but it is an interesting one.
Yeah. Yeah. So we hit July. I'm going to roll back the clock just a little bit. July of 2016, and a very unexpected turn happens in this case. Shannan's mother, Mary, was murdered by her own daughter, who is schizophrenic.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah was convicted and sentenced to 25 years, and she's currently at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility for Women. Of course, Mary had fought for years to get Shannan's death reclassified, and we know that she attempted to sue Dr. Peter Hackett, wondering why he lied to her, figuring that he must have been hiding something. How did this hit you, hearing this news around all this?
I remember exactly where I was. Woke up out of bed, read it on the news, read it on my phone. Somebody had texted it. I was completely blown away.
Yeah.
And then when the shock wore off, we thought about how we had gone to Mary Gilbert's house in Ellenville and what that experience was like, and trying to make some correlations between what we had seen when we went to do that interview and what had happened. And we had interviewed Sarah. And I couldn't quite tell if in our interview if she was just nervous. You know, some people get really quiet when they're nervous.
Sure.
And whether that was some indication of some mental illness that we didn't know about. So it was rough. It was really rough. We had interviewed Mary for the killing season, and she was a fighter, and it was just tragic,
She was the voice. I mean, she was the voice of this case for so long.
Yeah, it is interesting. I did find it an interesting thing, and not to disparage anybody in this case, but it is interesting how Shannan Gilbert's storyline ended up taking over the storyline of the other victims who definitively had been killed by a serial killer. And I think in a lot of ways, Shannan's story was just the mystery of her story. Like what really happened almost took over. That mystery was so compelling that it allowed people to kind of tragically ignore what happened to these other victims. And so we had always tried to be like, yes, we don't know what happened with Shannan victim, but there are these many victims over here that police people, the press, should pay attention to. But that didn't happen. And it's no one's fault. It's just, this is how narratives emerge in true crime.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is the official call on Shannan's death as of right now? I know we had Dr. Baden came in, he did an analysis on it. What's the official stance on it?
Did you have Dr. Baden on your show?
No, no.
Okay.
I've never met the man.
Dr. Baden's an interesting fellow.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's quite good at what he does, but anybody who appears for the defense in the O.J. Simpson trial, I just have to question their motives. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But if you're willing to go and say that, then what else are you willing to say? I guess is my question. There's these issues of the hyboid bone. There's a bone, that theoretically had a crack in it. And to some people, that was 100% proof that she had been strangled. To other people, it didn't mean anything except that animals, often go grab bones. And what I will tell you is that is a marsh. It's like your classic version of a marsh, complete with animals and muskrats and all these, terrible things. And so it's a shame. And it's a shame for this case that we don't know what happened, that we can't get to that truth. And in some respects, it might be a crazy coincidence, but the shame is really about the Suffolk County Police Department with regards to specifically James Burke and Spoda for obscuring what could have been better handled, to say it lightly, obscuring the truth. If they hadn't gone in and obscured that truth, we may know what happened, and then we may not have these questions, and it would be cleared up a heck of a lot sooner, and that would allow us to have concentrated on the crimes. But that's not what happened.
Right. But in a way, it kind of brought the attention to everything else, right? I mean, leaving that mystery lingering in the way that it did certainly kept the eyes open, and I mean, probably even help people come to your projects to try to understand more about it.
I guess so. I just wish it didn't have to be at the behest of such tragedy. I wish people were just interested in solving the case, and knowing what happened to all these victims. Right. But without a doubt, Shannan has become, in many respects, a victim. Again, just the fact that she could have led police to the bodies of so many other sex workers 9 miles away. How does that happen?
I know.
It's amazing. Yeah. Is it one of the greatest coincidences of true crime, or is it something more? And I still don't have an answer, to be honest with you.
Well, 9 years ago, I was trying to answer the question, is that case really connected to the rest? At this point, where do you sit? Is Shannan Gilbert connected to the Long Island serial killer?
It's hard to answer. I don't think so. It doesn't make sense that it would be.
Yeah.
Let's put it like that. It doesn't make sense if you look at all the other details that we know about Rex Heuermann. He did not operate at all in that manner, chasing people through the mud. Like, that wouldn't have happened. He was not that guy.
Right.
So if you want to look at it from that perspective, no, not at all. Mm-hmm. Was another murder happening? Was it this cabal of, eyes wide shut style party of, rich and powerful men, including, police chiefs, gathering around a woman and killing her? I don't think that was it either. Why? Because tragically, they didn't have to do that.
Right.
It wasn't necessary. But there's so many things I still can't reconcile. Listening to the 911 tape, it doesn't sound like, at least in the details, that somebody's trying to kill her, even though she is saying it. It sounds to me like something else.
Yeah. And it does help. The 911 call does help you understand some of the logistics of what's happening. You can literally hear it for yourself. Mm-hmm. There is no imminent threat of they're trying to kill me that goes on for 15 minutes. If they're trying to kill you, it's going to be done. And especially if they know you're on the phone with the police, like it doesn't linger like that. And you can hear her run off. And then we have the pickup of the other locations she went to, other people calling 911 saying there's a woman at my door. Like, there's enough trace there that we can follow all that. And to your point. Again,
when she was at Gus Coletti's house, she could have easily stepped inside. He
Right.
would have shut the door and protected her. He was a old man.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think he would have been deemed as a threat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I think Pack has said over and over, he's like, Shannan, get in the car, Shannan, get in the car. And she refused to get in the car. I think it was an episode.
Yeah.
But at this point,
Right.
at this point, the case has been that story has been pulled apart and put back together, and there's been so much obfuscation, whether intentional or not intentional,
Yeah.
so much, lingering by the police department that it's so screwed. We may never know.
Yeah. And it's forever going to be linked to the rest. I mean, that's just the truth of where that case is going to sit in all of us, really.
And in some ways, it should be because
Yeah.
of what she did, her sacrifice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's such a weird, like, looking at it from like a cosmic perspective, like the odds of that happening, but then what it leads to in terms of all these other families getting answers for where their loved ones have been for all these years, and now potentially on the steps of getting justice for it as well. Do you think that Rex acted alone?
It's a good question. I think Rex acted alone, but a lot of people helped him.
In what ways?
You know, Rex wasn't just a great serial killer. He had help from the Suffolk County Police Department in that they were so not willing to look at the case, not willing to investigate the case, having their own issues. Rex's most brilliant move was choosing Suffolk County as the place to commit his crimes.
Yeah.
It was the perfect location. You had a police chief who had his own involvement with sex workers, whether that really just made it so easy for him to get away with it for so long. That's what's incredible.
Do you think Shannan helped put a stop to his activity? Why did he stop?
Well, here's the thing. Rex Heuermann deposited 2 bodies after Shannan disappeared on Ocean Parkway. She disappeared in Oak Beach while her family is looking for her. Rex Heuermann is tragically depositing 2 bodies on Ocean Parkway. You could even completely conceivable that as he's discarding bodies, the Suffolk County Police Department is driving by back and forth.
It's amazing.
Could that, once Shannan's story got bigger, could that be one reason why he stopped? Yes, very much so.
Yeah. So what are the latest developments in the trial? I know I saw a YouTube short by you where you were speaking about a certain decision that was coming up. Can you share with us what that was?
Yeah, that would be the Fry decision that just came out last week, where it was decided by Judge Mazie that this new DNA technology has been deemed admissible by the court. This is really important. And this is actually huge for not just cold cases in New York State, but across the country. This is really precedent-setting decision that allows this new DNA technology to be used. And I think that is going to affect a lot of cold cases that were kind of stymied by a lack of, new methods with which to extract DNA. So that is a great thing. So now, with this DNA evidence being admissible, it is going to be very difficult to mount a sustainable defense against this. However, at the same time, there's been so much problems with Suffolk County that it's worth it from the Hail Mary perspective, from Michael Brown, Rex Heuermann's defense attorney. But it does mean that there is a lot of evidence against Rex Heuermann, both forensically, and then we've got a lot of evidence circumstantially, whether it's planning documents, whether it's burner phone calls, whether it's searches on his computer, whether it's articles that were found in his house, souvenirs, if you will, talking about victims who were then linked to him via DNA.
Yeah, absolutely. It's whole genome sequencing. And essentially, this is the type of sequencing where if you have a piece of hair, but you don't actually have the root, they're able to amplify it and get a complete profile. And it's been used scientifically all over the place. So there's tons of precedents to support that it's accurate. And we're gonna finally see it go through a court case in New York specifically. And I was a little concerned when we were talking about the box situation, because I know there's some judges that are pushing back on geofence information. And even Google, in late 2023, basically changed the complete makeup of location history so that now law enforcement can't request it from them anymore. It's not stored on their servers. It's all stored locally just on your phone. So I was a little nervous about that, but combined with knowing that they've got DNA samples tying for 6 of these cases, and that's moving forward, it's looking pretty strong.
I'll tell you a funny story. If you go looking at the search history, you can't find it now, but of Google, this alleged vehicle that Rex Heuermann drove, a green Avalanche, you could see it sitting on the street in a Google search.
No, really?
Yes.
Wow. Wow. All right. Well, just one more question to round things out here. The killing season highlighted web sleuths. We've been touching on that subject. Even featured an online researcher who had a very big supporting role. What's the future of crowdsourcing investigations looking like from your seat?
I think that's a great question. I think with the way that both police departments are embracing new technology because they have to, I think they're going kicking and screaming, but they are having to. The way in which crime trends are going in terms of solve rates plummeting below 50%, that I think this is going to have to change. I was much more, I'll be honest, I thought it would be embraced quicker, but I will tell you that it is troubling to see what has been going on with other cases, the Karen Reed case, things like that, this kind of infighting or this really unfortunate behavior.
Yeah.
I think that is unfortunately going to taint law enforcement's perspective of the general public when it comes to true crime. I think law enforcement, unfortunately, is now having to spend so much time fielding all these different issues, and not just people arguing, but people injecting themselves into the case, people trying to find new information that they want to be the first person to do so.
Oh, yeah.
So podcasters and things like that. So it's like they have a new criminal to deal with in some respects. So I was really hopeful, but then the popularity of true crime kind of ate itself.
Yeah.
From the inside, cannibalistic, if you will. And so now I'm skeptical that that will change.
Yeah, it's hit a tipping point, and it's kind of tipping off the edge in the wrong direction right now. I'm feeling that way too. What's unfortunate is, I don't think law enforcement generally has the time to look beneath the layers and try to find the pockets that would be helpful. And before, it was kind of obvious, web sleuths, Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you go to Reddit, like, you can find a good thread where you could tell it's a caring person and there's a decent conversation happening under it. And then you'll find 3 terrible threads where it's all nonsense. But web sleuths was always very consistent, because it's moderated, because they've groomed a particular type of person it's a person that wants to be more helpful that's going there.
It was great. And and I know law enforcement would go there to look for clues.
Tell us about SINISTER.
Oh, SINISTER is a new podcast that I have to dive into some stories that are maybe don't necessarily speak to 55 million people across the world.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a story out there for 5 million. Maybe there's a story out there for 10 million.
Yeah.
So I think that those are the stories I want to tell. So we have this podcast, and right now I'm just going back and re-interviewing a ton of people who I've always wanted to speak to.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, the place that I always would get to speak to them was in a sit-down interview right before we were going to talk about something.
Right.
So now I actually get to sit there and just, in my brain, I've got 30 years of true crime rolling
Yeah.
around in there, and I can't wait to get it out. All these stories. It used to be that we would have to create sizzles and decks and have all these discussions to do all this work to have a discussion about a story. And that's good work because it really makes you understand what the story is about and do all that research. But at the same time, I just want to have casual conversations with people about important topics like we are having now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know that feeling. So we will have a link. Yeah, we'll have a link to Sinister Podcast JZ. Well, Joshua, thank you so much for joining us here. I really appreciate your time and your insights. Keep up the amazing work, and fingers crossed. I hope someday our names are in the credits together on something.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
Careful what you wish for.
I'll take it. Thanks to Joshua Zeman for joining us here today. Please take a moment to check out Sinister using the links that you can find down below. As always, we do these presentations with very limited commercials. We can only do that because of our amazing supporters. If you'd like to become one, visit lordandarts.com. There you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, or even just buy us a coffee. We really appreciate being able to keep you in the details and away from the distractions. Take care, and please join us again next week, right here on the Lord and Arts channel.